It's our day of national celebration, a day when we unfurl the tricolour, a day of total joy. Do you sometimes wonder what this day was like when we actually got our independence? August the 15th, 1947. This was the day when freedom was in the air. We breathed in for the first time in centuries. For the first time, there was no restriction on chanting Vande Mataram. What would it have been like when the tricolour was unfurled for the first time on this day? Join me as we travel back now to relive this beautiful day when we became free. The day that not only changed our geography, but began a sparkling new history. This is a celebration of that day. A day when Indians could cry Bharat Mata Ki Jai without fear of punishment. This is a celebration of that day. A day when shackles of colonial slavery splintered and India stood up to walk onward unfettered. This is a celebration of that day. A day when the first Prime Minister of an independent India delivered his first national address. This is a celebration of that day.
Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge.
A day when Mother Nature too blessed a new nation with a gentle drizzle. This is a celebration of that day. A day when a rainbow appeared across the sky, as if to complement the three colours of a newborn India's flag. This is a celebration of that day. On the shoulders of that day sat the pain and oppression of 2 long centuries, which is why the unrestrained jubilation was balm to the entire nation. A day of our triumph, a day of national pride in the purest sense, a day of conviction and grit. It was India's day. An unforgettable day, yet one we know so little about. A country that had forgotten how to celebrate was suddenly in a state of ecstasy. You're about to relive that day and watch unseen images of that celebration. You'll hear the untold stories that unfolded between August 14th and 15th, 1947, the reflection of today's pride harking back to the celebrations of that day 75 years ago. What you're about to witness is India's real rebirth. The ties that bound a vibrant ancient land for so long were now in pieces. It's the story of those final 24 hours when we turned free. The British sent Lord Louis Mountbatten to India in February 1947 as the last Viceroy. Mountbatten was the great-grandson of Queen Victoria. Stories of his valour and war management during World War II were the stuff of legend at this time. The British government therefore had very high hopes on Mountbatten. He was told that the power transfer in India should be completed at all costs by June 1948. But when Mountbatten arrived in country, he realized he couldn't delay the proceedings. Oh no, he could not. He knew that a simmering, impatient India wouldn't wait that long under any circumstances. And under the pressure of a nation waiting to take birth, Mountbatten decided the date, August the 15th, 1947. Amazingly, the date was unacceptable to astrologers and pundits in India of the time. According to them, the stars weren't in favorable alignment on that day. They raised their objections and wanted the date, August 15th, to be changed. It was a difficult situation. You see, Lord Mountbatten didn't believe in astrology and the alignment of stars. He didn't want any other date. And then there were other concerns doing things so suddenly under a new Indian leadership. So a middle path was worked out. A decision was made to complete the national event on August the 14th before the midnight hour, with the speech of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru as Prime Minister designate, with all formalities completed before the arrival of August the 15th. This proposal was acceptable to everyone, and so preparations began accordingly. Technically, India and Pakistan were getting freedom at the same time. Lord Mountbatten wanted to be present in India during the special occasion. So he decided to visit Pakistan on August the 13th and return to India in the evening on August the 14th after completing formalities on the other side. An official visited Mountbatten just when he was about to leave for Karachi. He was given 2 sealed envelopes. The envelopes contained a report on the India-Pakistan partition. Mountbatten had both envelopes put away safely.
Thank you very much.
He didn't want partition to cast its shadow over the freedom celebrations. He locked them up in a chest and left for Karachi. Jinnah had left Delhi for Karachi a week before on August the 7th. Now 2 events were planned in Karachi on August the 13th and August the 14th. Now Jinnah was happy that he got 2 days thanks to the Viceroy's World War II war memories. But Pakistan was to come into existence as a new country on August the 15th. Deep inside, Jinnah knew that Mountbatten wanted to be in India and not Pakistan for the real event, and that's why Jinnah was given the day before. He had one more reason to be sullen that day. A silver-colored chariot he got for a state ride to mark partition couldn't be used like he wanted because the horse that was to pull that carriage had suffered a leg fracture. So he had to borrow one of the Viceroy's open-top Rolls-Royce cars for that event. In Delhi, meanwhile, preparations were on in full swing in the final run-up to the final hours. The Congress issued an order that all cinemas across the country would hold free screenings of the event for citizens on August the 15th, and that every school-going child be offered sweets and a freedom medal. Now there were only a few hours left. After that, the earth beneath us and the skies above would be free. The end of a 190-year-long rule of oppression and slavery was in sight. It was time for that proverbial tryst with destiny. Clouds hovered stubbornly over Delhi that day. It seemed as if they too were waiting eagerly for that historic moment. They were preparing to thunder and pour down to welcome a newborn, an epic, atmospheric celebration of India's reincarnation. The main event was scheduled in what is now the Central Hall of Parliament. The time was set for 11 p.m. on August the 14th. Dignitaries started coming in from late in the evening. Every pulse raced with every passing minute. Outside Parliament, the crowd swelled dramatically. Even Nehru had to appeal to the impatient crowds to stay calm. But just for a moment, imagine the mood out there, the emotions among those masses that night. Preparations were complete inside Parliament. Outside, strangers hugged each other in jubilation. It was raining from above, and nearly every eye was wet with emotion on the ground. Refugees who had left Pakistan were among the crowds. Bharat Mata Ki Jai, Inqilab Zindabad and Mahatma Gandhi Zindabad chants echoed across the skies over a place that would later be named Vijay Chowk. Not many know that Mahatma Gandhi, whose name was booming from the crowds outside, was not even present at the event that day. The dagger of partition had torn a deep gash in a freedom gained after the sacrifice of hundreds of thousands of our people. Rioting was taking place in many parts of the country at the time. Mahatma Gandhi was in Bengal on that day to appeal for calm. But somewhere in his heart he must have yearned to be where freedom was about to ring. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru's face was glowing. Every Indian had waited for this moment. None of us now can imagine the mixed feelings of anxiety and elation that elevated those tantalizing final minutes. The event began with a 2-minute period of silence in honor of all freedom fighters who had made the supreme sacrifice. A soul-stirring silence for those whose ghosts would consecrate the proceedings. It was followed by a numbing rendition of Vande Mataram sung by freedom fighter Sucheta Kriplani. Renowned political leader who later became the first woman chief minister of a state in independent India. Dr. Rajendra Prasad addressed the assembly. Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan delivered a seminal speech about India's distinct achievements.
With what result? That the transition is being effected in such an orderly and dignified way.
But the most memorable, iconic speech of that day was delivered by Nehru himself.
Long years ago, at the dawn of history, India started on her unending quest, and trackless centuries are filled with her striving and the grandeur of her successes and her failures. Through good and ill fortune alike, she has never lost sight of that quest or forgotten the ideals which gave her strength. We end today a period of ill fortune, and India discovers herself again. The achievement we celebrate today is but a step, an opening of opportunity to the greater triumphs and achievements that await us. Are we brave enough and wise enough to grasp this opportunity and accept the challenge of the future? Freedom and power bring responsibility. That responsibility rests upon this assembly, a sovereign body representing the sovereign people of India. Before the birth of freedom, we have endured all the pains of labor, and our hearts are heavy with the memory of this sorrow. Some of those pains continue even now. Nevertheless, the past is over, and it is the future that beckons to us now. That future is not one of ease or resting, but of incessant striving, so that we might fulfill the pledges we have so often taken and the one we shall take today. The service of India means the service of the millions who suffer. It means the ending of poverty and ignorance and disease and inequality of opportunity. The ambition of the greatest man of our generation has been to wipe every tear from every eye. That may be beyond us, but so long as there are tears and suffering, so long our work will not be over. And so we have to labor and to work hard to give reality to our dreams. Those dreams are for India, but they are also for the world, for all the nations and peoples are too closely knit together today for any one of them to imagine that it can live apart. Peace has been said to be indivisible, so is freedom, so is prosperity now, and so also is disaster in this one world that can no longer be split into isolated fragments. To the people of India, whose representatives we are, we make appeal to join us with faith and confidence in this great adventure. This is no time for petty and destructive criticism, no time for ill will or blaming others. We have to build the noble mansion of free India where all her children may dwell.
So true. No Indian must have slept a wink that night. India, as an ancient people in a brand new nation, had its eyes wide open to see the realization of its independence dream. The dream of a golden era, the dream of a fulfilling free life, the dream of a new India.
And when the soul of a nation, long suppressed, finds utterance.
Pandit Nehru's address came to be known by its title, Tryst with Destiny,
we take the pledge of dedication to the service of India,
and would go on to be listed as one of the greatest speeches of the 20th century. Not many know that the next day's newspapers added 2 additional columns to the speech that Nehru delivered. We think also of our brothers and sisters who have been cut off from us by political boundaries and cannot share at present in the freedom that has come. They are of us and will remain of us, whatever may happen, and we shall be sharers in their good and ill fortune alike. The sound of conches reverberated as it struck midnight. Long live Mahatma Gandhi echoed through Parliament's Central Hall. The conch blowing heralded the pledge for the building of a new nation, the hope of a golden future born from this oldest civilization. Emotions were so intense that day that Anglo-Indian leader Frank Anthony hugged Nehru. It was truly a moment of national prayer. Every Indian wanted to empower the nation with their soul and their sincerest positive energy. The Constituent Assembly issued a proposal after the ceremony that Lord Mountbatten be appointed independent India's first Governor-General.
And the Constituent Assembly of India has endorsed the recommendation that Lord Mountbatten be Governor-General of India on the 15th August 1947.
The entire audience rises. Members of the Viceroy's bodyguard enter in their white uniforms. ADCs, walking down the centre of the hall, and Lord Mountbatten.
I, Louis, Francis, Albert, Victor, Nicholas,
Viscount Mountbatten of Burma.
Viscount Mountbatten of Burma, do swear
I'll be faithful.
that I will be faithful
After that, freedom fighter Hansa Mehta presented the national flag.
We have today attained our goal. In presenting this symbol of our freedom, we once more offer our services to the nation. We pledge ourselves to work for a great India, for building up a nation that will be a nation among nations.
The ceremony then concluded with another rendition of Vande Mataram. Remember, this time Jana Gana Mana wasn't yet our national anthem. That would happen only 3 years later in 1950. Till then, the highest refrain remained Vande Mataram, which means praise to the motherland. Dignitaries started dispersing after the ceremony. Pandit Nehru and Dr. Rajendra Prasad went out of Parliament and straight to Lord Mountbatten to invite him to become the first Governor General of independent India. Mountbatten accepted their invitation and took out a bottle of wine to celebrate. After that, Pandit Nehru gave him the list of independent India's first ministers who were to take oath the next day. When Nehru left, Mountbatten opened the envelope and found it to be empty. Nehru, in his excitement, had forgotten to actually put the name list in. Everything that happened on August the 14th was historic. But what was to follow on August the 15th was something the British hadn't come anywhere near expecting. An exceptional image of an India breathing in free air. The first day of a free India. India has always been a land of faith and celebration. Hundreds of thousands have always thronged the sacred Kumbh Melas, for instance. But India's pilgrimage epicenter shifted on August the 15th, 1947. People woke up to breathe in a free morning after centuries. The pain of struggle, oppression and torture was gone. History. It was time to look up at the skies and the great beyond. The path from Delhi's India Gate to what is now called the Rashtrapati Bhavan was decked up for this Utsav. The Vijay Chowk of today, then called Princess Park. It was a public celebration on August the 15th, 1947, and anyone could come. The British estimated a crowd of perhaps some thousands. Preparations were exuberant. Arrangements were made to accommodate some 30,000 people. A platform was set up for the flag hoisting, with sitting arrangements for dignitaries and leaders. Bamboo poles were tied up in the front to act as makeshift barriers. Bands were summoned in for music and singing. A second platform was built alongside the flag hoisting podium. The stands had designated seats for VIPs. The ceremony was scheduled to start that evening. But before that, independent India's first oath-taking ceremony was to take place. The first cabinet of the newborn nation was extremely impressive, especially for the political diversity embodying national unity. The Darbar Hall was abuzz at 8 in the morning on August the 15th, 1947. Some 500 guests were present inside. They included diplomats, royals, royal representatives and senior leaders. The oath process began at 8:30 a.m. Lord Mountbatten administered the first oath to Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru as the first Prime Minister of independent India.
I, Jawaharlal Nehru,
I, Jawaharlal Nehru,
do solemnly affirm that I will not directly or indirectly communicate or reveal to any person or persons
Nehru also kept the external affairs and scientific research portfolios. After him, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel took oath of office and secrecy as the first Home Minister of the country.
I, Vallabhbhai Patel, do solemnly affirm that in the office of Minister,
That day, a total of 14 ministers took oath. Mahatma Gandhi had been of the opinion that priority in the first Council of Ministers be accorded to those who had actively fought for India's independence. Let the nation's interest be supreme and let political and ideological differences be set aside, he said. And that's precisely what happened. Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar became the first Law Minister of independent India. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, who differed deeply with Nehru on various matters, became the country's first Industry Minister. The cabinet had Shanmugam Chetty of the Justice Party as well as Rafi Ahmed Kidwai of the Kisan Mazdoor Praja Party. Independent India's first government had representatives from Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian and Parsi communities. One woman was also included in the cabinet. Rajkumari Amrit Kaur was India's first health minister.
On this historic day, when India takes her place as a free and independent dominion in the British Commonwealth of Nations, I send you all my greetings and heartfelt wishes. Freedom-loving people everywhere will wish to share in your celebration.
Basking in the glory of the event he had just overseen, Lord Mountbatten took oath as the first Governor-General at the end of the oath ceremony. After that, everybody present there went in a single cavalcade from the Viceroy House to the Council Chamber. Everybody was excited about the evening ceremony. Everyone wanted to reach the venue, well dressed and fully ready for the rituals. Remember, arrangements were made for 30,000 people, but attendance surpassed it on the morning of August 15th itself. Officials in charge of the arrangements looked helpless as the number of people went way above what had been prepared for. By now it became difficult to keep count. It was pointless because they just kept coming. Official estimates put the number of people coming in for the celebrations at over 500,000. That's over 16 times what was expected. And the day remained like that in entirety. Emotions and preparations were beyond control. People were squeezed tightly. Monsoon humidity was making it harder to breathe, but every lung was filled with the scented air of fresh freedom. Everyone felt lucky to see that day, to be there in the flesh. A compromise with inadequate facilities seemed like a small issue to bear. Lord Mountbatten and Lady Edwina arrived at the venue in a carriage. But even for the Governor-General, it wasn't possible to reach the platform because of the overwhelming crowds. Helpless and without choice, the couple decided to witness the flag hoisting from their carriage. It's difficult to think of crowds of this kind on a day like this today. But then people were said to be so squeezed, they couldn't even lift their hands. The planning for the event was, however, very, very grand. It was impossible to do anything else other than the actual hoisting of the Indian flag. Even band members were lost in the crowds. They couldn't reach the platform. With no choice, the organizers decided to drop all other planned rituals and proceed with the centerpiece of the event. Of course, the unfurling of our tricolour. India's pride, made up of the world's three most beautiful colors and symbolic of the nation's unity, was unfurled before the masses at 6 p.m. on August the 15th, 1947. As we can only imagine, it was a truly stirring, numbing moment. This wasn't just a flag, it was the pledge of every Indian, the supreme symbol of our love for a brand new nation. Mother Nature too wanted a part in the celebration, it seemed, because when India's first Prime Minister Nehru unfurled the tricolour for the first time, a rainbow appeared up in the skies. Astonished crowds welcomed independent India's first Indradhanush with loud exultations of Bharat Mata Ki Jai. In his report about that day, Mountbatten would make it a point to mention the rainbow. It may be difficult to imagine now, but the mood was such that Indians seemed for a moment to have pardoned the British for their generations of oppressive rule. Mountbatten was surprised when crowds surrounding his carriage raised slogans in his name as well. He was the only British colonial to ever be hailed so wholeheartedly in the country. Nehru joined Mountbatten in his carriage. While returning from the ceremony, he sat on its hood through the route. India's independence evoked mixed reactions in Britain, which had just given up its most prized colony, the jewel, as it were, in its crown. But the tides of Indian sentiment witnessed on August the 15th, 1947 at Princess Park left everyone emotional across the world.
When India takes a place as a free and independent dominion in the British Commonwealth of Nations,
Delhi was then illuminated like never before. Connaught Place and the Red Fort were awash in the colours of the tricolour. Lord Mountbatten hosted a dinner for 2,500 guests at the Governor-General's house, which is the Rashtrapati Bhavan today. The tricolour was unfurled in the capital cities of many countries in honour of India's independence. August 15th wasn't just a date. It signified the struggle and determination of tens of millions of our people. The flag hoisting that began in Princess Park area has since become an annual ritual, with the venue shifted to Delhi's iconic Lal Killa. Prime Minister Nehru unfurled the tricolour from the Red Fort the next day, August the 16th, 1947, a day after the public independence ceremony. This was recorded in a research paper of the Lok Sabha Secretariat.
एक आजाद मुल्क में कोई बड़े सवाल हल नहीं हो सकते जब तक कि आम जनता का उसमें पूरा हल करने में सहयोग न हो और मदद न हो, क्योंकि पहला फर्ज आपका यह है, हमारा और आपका हर एक का, कि हिंदुस्तान की खिदमत कुछ न कुछ करें.
Since then, all prime ministers do flag hoisting at the Red Fort on Independence Day. Similarly, the tradition of singing the national anthem after the flag hoisting began after 1950. Remember that letter of partition that Lord Mountbatten had kept away safely before he had gone to Karachi? Well, on August the 17th, he pulled out those letters and presented them finally to both countries. And the same day, the announcement of the Radcliffe Line was made. 3 other countries won independence on August the 15th, but in separate years. South Korea won independence from Japan 2 years earlier on August the 15th, 1945. Bahrain won it from Britain on August the 15th, 1971, and Congo from France on August the 15th, 1960. Pakistan celebrated 2 Independence Days on August the 15th in Muhammad Ali Jinnah's lifetime. But the tradition was given up after his death, and Pakistan has since celebrated its Independence Day on August the 14th, a day before India's. In these 75 years of independence, India has left its past of slavery far behind and is now leading the world on multiple fronts, in line with its tradition of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. But as you've seen here today, began with a single day and a night. It's our day of national celebration, a day when we unfurl the tricolour, a day of total joy. Do you sometimes wonder what this day was like when we actually got our independence? August the 15th, 1947. This was the day when freedom was in the air. We breathed in for the first time in centuries. For the first time, there was no restriction on chanting Vande Mataram. What would it have been like when the tricolour was unfurled for the first time on this day? Join me as we travel back now to relive this beautiful day when we became free.